Liberate IT is an Oracle NetSuite solution provider that has been servicing Australian and New Zealand companies since 2011.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Great to have you with us. Welcome to the latest of our webinar series, which is NetSuite's Planning and Budgeting Solution. I am your host, as usual, Andrew Liniger, Relationship Manager for Liberate IT. Glad to have you with us. Quick agenda and overview for today. I'll be going through a couple of team updates, what's going on with our team, and also what some achievements that that Liberate have made, some NetSuite updates, and then we'll get very quickly into the session proper, where Berndt will present all things planning and budgeting. As usual, we'll be recording today's session. So we'll have those recordings available on our website or our YouTube channel. Do please go and check out some previous ones that we've put together. Today, always welcome your Q&A. We'll have some time at the end for Q&A, but if you're seeing something as we go and you've got a question for us, put it in the Q&A function and I'll interrupt Berndt and ask him your question. Please don't use the chat function. I don't monitor that, so just to keep things nice and simple for me. Okay, team updates. We as a team are expanding and growing, which is fantastic. Michelle Cronje, who went and had her little baby recently, she's back temporarily, heading out our support team for a period of time. So it's great to have her back with us. We've got a new consultant based in New Zealand, Angela Van Engelen. She brings 18 years of experience with her, and looking forward to working more with her. Sarah Fox also has joined the team as a new consultant, also based in Auckland, and she's got extensive NetSuite administrator experience. And Sarah, who I met for the first time yesterday, which is fantastic. She's in our team in Sydney. She's one of our developers. Got a really cool development hub happening here in Sydney, and the guys are just do amazing work. And so if you've got any customization or scripting that you think, hey, we could probably do things a little bit better in NetSuite, that team is awesome. And so please do get in touch and we'll line it up for you. As a business, we're also made some improvements. We are the first NetSuite partner in the ANZ region. And as it turns out, one of the first 10 in the world to gain the competency badge that is replacing the star rating system. So over in the top right, I don't know which way I'm pointing, everything's reversed in Zoom, but you'll see they now have the expertise in, and of course, we're experts in ERP. So that's the area that we focus in, and we're quite proud of that achievement. That isn't just something we apply for and they just give us. We have to show that a whole bunch of our consultants know what they're doing and can demonstrate that. So no easy task by our professional services team there. From a NetSuite point of view, Suite World is returning to Las Vegas, so obviously the US, September 27 to 30 this year. Do please let me know if you're planning on attending. Would love to make sure that we look after you if you are planning on getting up there. So put that in your calendar. No word on Suite Connect, which is a Sydney-based event, but we'll keep eyes and ears out for that. In terms of webinars, we obviously love delivering webinars here for all of our customers. For those with the Learning Cloud Support Pass, NetSuite do regular webinars themselves around NetSuite features. So there's the searches and KPIs coming up in a couple of days, I think it is. And is that right? Oh, I may have missed that. Oh yeah, 17 June, sorry, next month. Suite Analytics Workbook, a couple of sessions coming up, and Suite Flow coming in July. So keep an eye out for those new sessions, plus the plethora of all the financial webinars that they have going every fortnight. Okay, so without any further ado, would like to present Berndt DeBruyn. He is from RCI, and he has got a whole swag of things that he's going to go through with you all today. So Berndt, welcome. Great to have you with us, mate.
Okay, thanks, Andrew. Can I just confirm, can you hear me?
Got you loud and clear, can see your screen.
Can you see my screen as well? Okay, that's
yes,
good.
man.
Okay. First of all, who am I and why should you be listening to me? I started off, studied finance, worked as a management accountant across a whole series of industries, interesting stuff like avionics and dynamite and printing ink. And then basically early in 2010, started getting involved on the planning and budget side. At that stage, it was all on-premise applications. Worked on the planning and budget side as a customer, then worked for Oracle. So I've been a customer, I've worked for the vendor and then implementation partner, and then been in the NetSuite world for the past year. RCI, Reed Consultant International, we also work in the NetSuite space, and now recently with me starting in the NetSuite side with NSPB, with NetSuite Planning and Budget. Now, in the Oracle world, you always have this problem of all the acronyms. So I'm going to try and avoid all the acronyms and just talk plain English. What I'll be going through is I'll take you through a bit of a case study so you can see how people would use NSPB in a normal world. And then towards the end, just touch upon a few other things, questions that I'm often asked is, and why would you use NSPB and not keep using Excel? And then just things about implementation and keeping it going. Now, as a fictitious company based in Australia selling product, as a CFO, I'm actually going to just log in what I do every morning, and I kind of just have a look at NetSuite Planning and Budget. Now, organizations can actually access this through their intranet. You normally have single sign-on. I just have the link that I kind of through my URL. Now, I specifically asked one of the guys to set up, and in the Oracle world, these are called infolids, asked him to set up a few high-level numbers that I kind of look at. And the first thing I can see is, oh, my actual year-to-date net profit looks okay, but somehow in the forecast for next year, it's dropping. It's not looking that good. So this alerts me to actually just have a look at some of the underlying detail. And what you can see with these is when I click on this, it can flip around. So I've got additional view at the back, so I can immediately look at my expenses broken down by department. And then I can even expand this a bit further, so it shows me next year's forecast. And I can see that, the expenses, especially like this dark bluish color at the bottom, around my sales expenses seems to be a lot more for next year. So this potentially warrants some investigation. So the next step that I can do is I actually go have a look at my specific OPEX dashboard. And what I can see is on the bottom left-hand side, you can see the actual current year, and then on the right-hand side, the future. And you can see that there is my 3.6 million versus my 3.2 million, and there's a clear blip here. Now, all of these dashboards are set up so you can see at the top, currently this looks at total department. So I'm kind of thinking, perhaps the problem is in my sales department, so I'll just have a look at that, and immediately it changes and I can see, there's a big spike. And when I start drilling down and I go, okay, let me have a look at selling expenses, it can show me clearly there seems to be an issue around commission expenses. And then I flip over on the left-hand side, you can see there's a navigation panel, and at the bottom, the same as in Excel with different tabs. So these are all different views of the same data and ways you can actually look at the data. And this is where I now think, it's time to use some of the really funky features in this application. And I, under actions, go and say, let's have a look at predictive planning. And first of all, I'm clicking on that line just to give me a bit more real estate. And then I can actually have a look and I can see, this expense has got a cyclical nature, and it kind of shows me all the different ways that this is going to pan out. Now, if I click on the commission expenses one, I can see there's a lot of history that it can use because there's a lot of history since 2017. And I maximize the view so I can actually have a look at all the different years and how this actually pans out. Now, what you can see on the right-hand side is it gives you a couple of pieces of information. So it tells you the prediction is 2.3%, but you actually in your forecasting 15.6. And that's why this bit comes out as red, because it says you are far more predicting way more than what this statistical formula would do. Now I can zoom in on the specific, just a couple of months. So immediately it kind of just shows it to me and I can clearly see this blip. And I can then go, oh, but I know there's been quite a bit of restructure recently in the past. Let's reduce the number of months that we actually use to forecast. Let's just look at the latest year. So I changed the past start year to 21, where it was in 2017, and apply. And immediately it's showing me a different graph. Now, what I can do is now if I scroll across, you can see, oh, hang on, there's 330. That is, which causes this big blip. And this is way more than what it normally should be. Now, I do have the option to now start adjusting this, and what you can see immediately, that cell turns yellow. So what that means, it's not been submitted to the database yet, but it's going to actually change it to that. And what I can do is I can actually start dragging the total series. And as soon as I do that, it changes all the forecast. So it becomes a way of visually manipulating your total forecast to be more in line. And you can see this reducing until, let's say, it's pretty close to what the statistical forecast would actually pan out, which is a very good way. But as CFO, what I'm thinking is, I'm not going to change this. I want the accountant who's responsible to do this to actually do that. So I simply just click on refresh because I don't want to change those numbers. But what I want to do clearly is I want to ask the accountant, what's happening with this? And then I can right click and I can actually go add a comment, and I can go actually type a comment, and what you can see, it'll post a comment and you can see the name, and this will then be clearly visible to the accountant. Send an email to the accountant and ask him to have a look. Now, what I'm doing now is I'm just switching over to Firefox because I cannot log in as two people at the same time on the same browser. So I sign in as the accountant, same application. And the accountant then basically logs in, have a look at the OPEX dashboard, and can see this blip as well. But as the accountant, what I do is I decide I want to actually just go and have a look and get a bit more detail around this, because I can see this commission is high. I don't know what's driving it. I've spoken to some people and I might have actually incorporated that into my budget. So I click on the next tab next to it, which is the OPEX report, and you can see all the different months going across. Now, what I want to do is, I'm more of a, as the accountant, I feel more comfortable working in Excel than actually in the web front end. So what I do is I simply just click on actions and I say open in SmartView. Now, SmartView is an Excel add-in. It connects to the same database. It gives you all the same functionality. It's just a different way of interacting with the same data. You can see it opens a file, and if I open Excel, it's just opened exactly that same form in Excel. Now, what you will notice is you got all these different dimensions. So because the data in the actual application is stored in a multi-dimensional cube. So in other words, it means each of these data points need to actually have, let's say, the address of each of these dimensions. Now, this is the actual form that it's opening up. And what I then do is I simply click on Analyze and move the point of view up to where it's easy for me to interact with. Now, what I want to do is I want to have a look at just my commission expenses. So in the top left-hand corner, and these things you use a lot when working in SmartView, I want to look at only my commission expense, and then I can actually go keep only, and immediately it just keeps that one in the specific report. Then click on the month, and I say, okay, pivot, and it actually moves the month down in the rows. And if I click on pivot for the account, what I can see now are all the different months going across, and I can see the account going across the top with the different scenarios. There's actual, there's my forecast for the current year and my forecast for the next year. And what I want to do is I want to have a look and see what are the sales numbers. So I can compare the sales numbers and see, is there a spike in sales that causes the actual commission to increase as well. The easiest way to do this is basically, you can see at the top, it's got member selection. Click on member selection and simply just type sales. It searches for the first sales account, and that is the actual account that I want. So I copy that across to the others and then basically just refresh. And immediately now you can see I've got total sales that it's comparing to commission. And you can see there is my 330 amount, whilst I don't see a massive difference in sales that drives this. So there must be something else driving or something else behind this. Andrew, you'll stop me if I'm going too fast or not making sense or whatever.
Making perfect sense, Berndt.
Okay, good, thanks.
Even I'm following.
Okay, that's good. I sometimes tend to go, really fast because you operate in these things every day. So
yeah, no, all good.
Okay. I do have the option to keep interacting in SmartView, but I'm going to go back to the web front end because in here I have a really nice visual way of interacting with some of the data. So at the moment, this is set to total department, and I want to actually just look at the sales department because you can clearly see my 330. Now, what you'll notice, you've got that little triangle in the top, and if I right click on this and I go to comments, you can see there is the comment my manager made, and he says, please check this out, it's too high. So I've got the option to post something, and immediately now you're starting to track conversation around a number. So it doesn't become, oh, somebody sent me an email about something, go and dig around and try and find that email. What I then do is I go and talk to all the different, or let's say to the sales manager, and go and ask him, and there must have been some reason for me updating this. And after speaking to the sales director, he basically told me, hang on, there's a special commission round that's going to happen because there's a lot of other people trying to recruit our sales guys, and that's why there was a special commission that was issued to actually go out to the sales guys. And what I can then do is I can actually start building up lower level information that contributes to that amount. So let's say I can find out that we're going to pay John and what you can see as soon as I click on actions in NSPB, it's very family oriented. So a lot of the wording you will see are all things like child, parent, ancestor, and then you can see a child or sibling. So if I click on sibling, what it'll do is it'll just add another line at the same level. And you can see in this way, you're actually starting to build up the underlying detail that feeds to this. Now, when I click on save, what you can see, that number is now got a green background, which shows me there is underlying detail underneath this. Now, another option, now this can be queried by anybody because they can simply come in and it's alerted them and they can simply click on it and they will see the supporting detail that feeds into that specific cell. Now, another option, and I'm just going to choose the cell next to it. Another option, what you could have done is you can actually just add supporting, you can add a document. And I could basically, on my laptop, browse, and I can simply just upload a document. And this is then available to anybody. Now, again, you will see the little icon on the top. So anybody who queries that number and would question where did that number come from, they can actually just come in, look at it, see there's an attachment, and actually open the actual attachment and have a look at it. I think that Excel sheet was just still kind of anyway. And so you can understand where the numbers come from, and you can then are able to interrogate this, and people can actually come back and would always know what underpins that number. Now, come towards month end. As the accountant, what you would do is log in and you would actually go have a look. You can see all your different cards, but you'd go in because all of that information would then feed into your income statement. You can see your income statement by month. And what you can see is you'd have actuals up to a certain point and then your forecast feeding in, and this shows it to you by month. Now, what some of you might have noticed at this stage is you got this little, nobody really knows exactly what to call it, but this little squiggly at the top. And what that denotes, you will only see that against actuals. But as soon as you see that, it means you can actually right click and drill down from here into NetSuite to actually go and see what made up that specific number. Now, as the accountant, I can actually then look at the dashboard. And again, here you've got that capability to actually start drilling down to all the specific, you can keep traversing down your accounting hierarchy. And the same at the bottom as well, you can actually keep drilling down. So it gives you that whole interactive capability.
Hey, Berndt.
Yep.
Am I able to ask a question? I was a bit slow on the questions that came through, mate. Is that okay?
Sure. Yeah, that's fine.
Great. I remember when you were attaching that document to the numbers, the question was, are you able to attach more than one document to the numbers?
We can go try. I'm sure you can, yes.
No, I trust you. Or the alternative might be.
Andrew, let me go and test that and come back.
Yeah, we'll do that. We'll do that later. We'll answer that one offline.
Okay.
Rule number one of a live demo: never do something you don't know is going to be the answer. The other question was, does this do cash flow forecasting as well?
Yes, it does do cash flow. The cash flow that we do, I just want to step through this last bit and then I'll get on to the cash flow. Okay.
Let's do it. Thanks, mate. That's it.
We've got quite a number of people who asked us for this. And what you can see in this case is you pretty much have a report that shows you your year-to-date number and it shows you the actual month number. And then you can see there's variance between, let's say, your forecast and actual. Now you can obviously set a variance between budget and actual and budget and forecast. And then what you do is you've got the option to add commentary. Commentary at this stage, it is by line, and immediately what you'll see is some cells are white, like this cell as an example, and as soon as it's white, it means you can enter data in there, whilst if it's gray in the background, it means you cannot enter data. It is either a calculation or it's a field that's made read only. And in this case, the reason why you cannot do it at total sales and income is these are totals that actually automatically calculate the underlying detail. Now, what I can do is I can simply go and add I can easily add additional comments, and this will then, and what I wanted to specifically show is, as a management accountant, if it's your area to look after, at the end of the month, you are the guy closest to the numbers. You talk to the operational people, and you want that information to flow through to your board pack. And in terms of reporting, what you would do next is you can actually set up a series of reports, which are basically then you can collate into a report pack that becomes your whole board report. And as you can see, I'll just zoom in a bit, you can see that your comments feed through to this. So immediately you've got that capability to actually place the comments somewhere, and it'll retain it going forward. So next month, if you run for the next month and you want to go back and see what the comment was last month, it'll still be available. It's not somewhere in a Word doc which is saved somewhere, or an email, or where do I go and find it? Now, to answer the other question, what you get in this model is you have workforce. Now, under workforce, very simply imports all your workforce information, all the people, and then there's a couple of assumptions that you set up around that, things like your payroll tax or super contribution and things like that. Under forecast, you've got the ability to have, let's say, lower level models. And the example that I showed was around OPEX, but you do have actual models to drive your revenue and cost of sales at that lower level. Now you can see, as an example, you've got all your items going down, and then you actually have the ability to capture your sales price. You've got your cost of goods, and then this organization, as an example, sells computer equipment, but it also sells services based on this. And you then have the ability to actually go and change this and choose a trending method, how you're going to forecast this going forward. And the same around some of the other models, for instance, advertising, travel and expenses, all of those, you do have the ability to forecast those at a lower level. Now, in terms of financials, you've got the income statement, you've got balance sheet, and then we have cash flow as well. Now, take note, cash flow is only what's termed indirect cash flow. So you can see this little F here, which means that's the formula. And if people wanted to query where does that formula come from, you can actually see the actual formula, what it does. So all of the cash flow will be calculated as all of the balance sheet or P&L accounts that actually contribute and roll up to become your cash flow. Does that answer the question, Andrew?
I think so. Yes, no further questions on that, Berndt.
Okay. I think if I just go back to now, one of the questions I'm often asked is, why can I not keep doing this in Excel? Now, some of the things that I've shown you, you will clearly see, okay, for instance, like the predictive modeling, to do that in Excel requires quite extensive formulas. And what we found, and that is kind of pretty much the standard if you go into any organization, is you have people with varying Excel skills. And being an ex-accountant, what you start doing is you're building and building and building more complex Excel models until, let's be honest, you're the only one who really understands how it works. And then somebody goes, oh, let's add a new product, or let's add a new department. And you go, oh, another 3 days fixing that Excel model. And as soon as you start doing that, errors creep in. There were actually studies done around the impact of spreadsheet errors and how and the damages that have caused organizations where they've made incorrect decisions. But there's no way to actually validate, because Excel is like ultimately, let's say, flexible. You can enter stuff anywhere. And then what we found as well with a lot of these Excel models, it's not always transparent. What assumptions are used? Where do things come from? We all know it takes a lot longer to actually build Excel models that are driven by, let's say, high-level assumptions or parameters. And then you get down to the real logistical basic issues with working in Excel. And that is, what is the latest version of the spreadsheet? Oh, only one person can update it at a time. Can we refresh the data? Yes. Okay. A day or two later to actually get fresh data into it. And then simple stuff like, my numbers changed. Who changed my number? What did they change it from? When was it changed? That is something that I just wanted to show as well. And you can see on any actual number, you do have the option to go change history. And as soon as I click on change history, you can see who changed it, when was it changed, what was the value prior to the change, and what is the new value. There is the change that I've just made. And so immediately you have, let's say, as the owner of that budget, all that control to go, I know if people mess around with my numbers. And then lastly, on the reporting side, because it's the multi-dimensional cube, you can slice and dice, and you can actually do a whole lot of really interesting and value-adding reporting that becomes really difficult in Excel. And again, the question you always have to ask is, this is an awesome report. Can I have it next month as well? And then they go, oh, that's going to take me so long to do. Whilst once you've created something in this application, next month, it's a matter of just clicking on a button and it can rerun that. And then also that, what happens if we change? Now, again, the underlying models are all driven by assumptions. What if we change our increase percentage from 2% to 2.5%? How does that impact the bottom line? And to actually do that in Excel is quite a mission. And immediately you have to go, okay, we'll have to bring this back to like really high level numbers. Whilst if you utilize something like NSPB, it is just simply changing one assumption, saving that version as a new what if version, and then you can actually compare the two. So there's a lot of value in this application versus keep doing it in Excel. Now, in terms of the application, what do you get when you implement NSPB? And the background that I came from is very much where we'd go into organizations and you'd go, what do you want? And then you've got like quite an extensive requirements and design sessions. You'd actually step through and say, exactly how do you budget for this? Exactly how do you do that? And then you go and design the application to meet that. Now, it is a very good application that you end up with, but it's quite a lengthy and could be a relatively expensive exercise to get there. Now, you can think especially around things like testing of the application as well, because behind a lot of those smarts, you have formulas, you've got rules running saying, take this number, divide it by that number, and push it into this based on stuff. And that is where the beauty of something like NSPB comes from, because it is a pre-built application. All the stuff that I've shown you today in terms of those forms, the infolets, the smarts behind saving data, and it pushes it. Let's say I have a lower level revenue or cost of sales model, and I save, it pushes that into my income statement and calculating of the balance sheet, retained earnings based on the income statement, and then calculating cash flow. Those things have all been built into the application, so you don't have to start from scratch. So besides this, you've got the data integration with NetSuite. The way that works is inside NetSuite, you have a whole lot of saved searches. I'm starting to sound very NetSuite if I say this, but there is a specific bundle that you download for NetSuite that you install, the planning and budget, which then creates a lot of those saved searches for your metadata, being accounts, departments, locations, and your data as well. And then NetSuite Planning and Budget simply accesses those saved searches and then pulls the data from NetSuite into Planning and Budget. And then the last bit, Smart View, is also standard. To actually get Smart View going is you pretty much just download it from the NSPB application and install it on your computer. It is an Excel add-in. Oracle constantly keeps coming up with newer versions of it, and then you simply download it from the Oracle site and update. Now, the effort to implement this depends. You basically have the two options, either standard, being just the finance side, or premium, which is your workforce, all the lower level models, and then the finance side. Approach we basically take is it's very much the same application, but what we do, if people only want the finance side, we'll still put down the total application. We will only configure the finance side, so we will not upload, because in that way, if organizations in future then go, oh, hang on, it'll make so much sense because my employee costs are 70% of my expenses, we can then switch that on easily. It's not a lot of work to actually do that. The way we approach this is normally we kind of just have a requirements, let's call it requirements alignment in the beginning, where we pretty much just understand how organizations do stuff, and then try and identify if there are any big showstoppers. Like, for instance, what we find with the one project we're working on at the moment is it's a group with two businesses, and each of the businesses have different financial year ends. So you have to cater for that in your period dimension and actually be able to, and those things we need to know up front, because as a standard, the application assumes the total business will have the same year end. But then pretty much just implement it, and that is, let's say, relatively cookie cutter standard. We can put it down in a certain amount of time, depending on how good the NetSuite application is. But if your NetSuite segmentation is in place, it's pretty predictable to put it down in that time. Just as a proviso, we don't normally, because a couple of the projects we're working on at the moment, we don't put down NetSuite Planning and Budget until your NetSuite segmentation, in other words, your chart of accounts, and then things like your subsidiaries and location classes, those things are in place and decided, because otherwise it could cause a lot of rework on the planning and budget side. And then I made a bit of a mess of the numbers there, but this configure and modify, that is kind of the iterative process where we then start going through with organizations and sit down and say, okay, as a standard, you get this form. As a standard, you've got these navigations that if you click on this and you click on that, you go there. And then organizations have a look and see, would that suit them? Would they want to change it? And in the process, we teach people how to do those things. I think it's very clear. My background is I studied finance, and I then moved over to the IT side. So I want to say this is very much an application that can be modified and where you can do development as a non-really technical IT person. So it is, you don't have to be daunted and go, oh, I need to understand C++ or I need to understand HTML or something like that. Now, another question and things to keep in mind is how much effort would it be to maintain this application? And again, you can see my background. I was the administrator of Hyperion for a big university. So we're talking massive amounts of data, 150 to 200 users, lots of complexity. And the most important thing is you are the champion or custodian of that application. So I need to ensure that the data is fresh, the data is recent, and the data balances to the underlying source of truth, which is your ERP. And as an administrator, all you need to do is overnight, you've got those interfaces running. So you just need to monitor those. If there were any rejections, and it said, I cannot load this code because it contains invalid characters or something, you got to address those and decide if you're going to communicate to the wider community and go, oh, there's been a big issue overnight, we couldn't load stuff. As an example, what happened at the university is somebody forgot to change the exchange, the currency. And so they loaded Indonesian baht as Australian dollars, and it became, I kid you not, probably like 20 zeros. It completely blew the field. And so it couldn't load that information, but then you have to go and see, okay, what is the problem, and just fix those. And then there's a bit of work on month end to actually make sure that you change. The whole application is based on variables at the back. So you got variables like current month and current year and current forecast name and those kind of things. And you change these variables just at the end of month end or at year end. And then very much as the administrator and as super users, we teach people how to create your own forms, because you know your business best. So you go, oh, if we look at this and that and split it by this, it'll be awesome. So that is where our focus lies, is when we walk away from a project, make sure people have the necessary skills to create forms, to create reports, to create dashboards, and the last bit, navigation flows. What I showed you in the application, and again, these tabs you've got at the bottom here, and then these icons you got on the side, they're all customizable. So we can go, if you're looking at this form and you want to look at another one and you want to look at another one, and the same with these cards as well. All of these things are called navigation flows, and they're all customizable, and it's relatively easy to actually do that. And the same with these infolets as well. We teach people how to create these because 2 months, 2 years ago, COVID wasn't an issue, but today you could actually have, okay, number of people COVID in the company or something like that, which could be infolet. And that's basically it. Andrew, any questions?
Yes, we have some questions. Thanks, Berndt. I thought I'll let you wrap up rather than interrupting you for the last few questions that have come through. So, hey, with SmartView, just from a licensing point of view, you've referred that to as an Excel add-in, which it is, but that's usually code in demos for that's costs extra, right? But
No.
Does that cost extra in terms of software?
If you have you need connectivity. Now, what you can see, what I do is I'll click on the down, and then you can see there's something called downloads. Now, as soon as and then I can actually download SmartView. Now, nothing stops you from actually going and just Google Oracle SmartView and then download it from the Oracle site. Now, you're going to need an Oracle account for that, but the only thing you need to get SmartView to work is you need a user license to be able to log into NSPB. There's no additional cost for SmartView.
Awesome. I've got a question from Peggy. And remember when we were in the income statement and for the actuals, you could click on the squiggly line to drill through into the detail. The question was, does that actually drill in through to NetSuite?
Yes, I can unfortunately not show you in the demo at the moment because I had some demo data, and the sandbox, the NetSuite sandbox expires after a while. So you set it up to a NetSuite sandbox, and the integration I had, that sandbox expired.
The fun of doing demos, mate.
As soon as it's a production environment, it'll stay.
Yeah.
And you can, in that underlying detail, you can actually expose lower level detail that it'll sum up into the application. But it allows you, if you, and again, this is a setting that you actually set up in the application. If you enable people to do that, it allows you to step through and go all the way to your saved search in NetSuite, from where you then go and click on it and see your specific invoice or journal or something that underpins that.
Awesome. Next question from Graham. Does it have multi-currency capability? Their particular business has both NZ and AU currencies.
Yes, there is a specific dimension that is currency, and so it's got the whole functionality of input currency and reporting currency.
Got you. Great. So you could see the results in either currency and then whatever your reporting currency is.
Yep.
Okay, great. I articulated that very poorly, so apology. Next question, is there cell level security? So can only certain cells be updated by specific people?
Okay, security as a standard, you've got security groups. So you start off with groups and you call it like a viewer, user, and a super user. A viewer can view only data, and then a user, let's say, can update data, but I can, in which you can see at the top here, these stove plates. I can set up different navigation flows. Now, as an example, if I would now click on payroll only, what you can see, you've got far less icons, which means I want this person to do only payroll. This person does not need to know about finance. Now, firstly, if they can't see it, they can't really get to it. But then you can actually go down to such a granular level of security. I can put security almost on every dimension. So I can go, you cannot see this specific cell. The only issue there is there's a sweet spot. You do not want to make it to such a low level, and you definitely don't want to set up security per person, because it becomes a lot of work to maintain that. You want to set it up to roll and go like an accountant, CFO, operational manager. They can see this, they can do that.
Great, got it. Does the integration extend also to OpenAir?
The little bit that I know about OpenAir, it is a project management application. Now, in NSPB at the moment, it caters for projects, bringing projects in as sub-customers. So you do have a dimension called relationships in NSPB, where it stores your customers and you bring in projects underneath it. Now, nothing stops you in the application to go and find a way to actually deal with it. Now, what I'm saying is, first of all, what we do is we kind of try and utilize one of the existing dimensions as a project dimension. Reason for that is, as soon as you add a new dimension, it's a bit like adding another wheel to a car. You know, you got to kind of change the structure. If you add a completely new dimension, it becomes a bit more work, because you got to fix up all the forms, you got to fix up all the rules, you got to fix a whole lot of things. But nothing stops you from doing that. But what we normally do is, if people come up with things like that, like a custom segment, we try and incorporate it into one of the existing ones.
Yeah. Okay, great. So fair to say, not out of the box, but you could work with the business to work out, well, exactly how would we achieve that? Yeah. Okay. There was another element to that question was, does it also connect through to EDW? But I don't know what that acronym stands for. So, well, Graham, if you could let me know what that is while we still do the other questions, I'd be happy to help out. But I suspect it's the same answer.
I'm thinking it's a data warehouse.
Right.
EDW, okay. The E is probably like an executive or a something data warehouse.
Got you.
Now,
yes, enterprise data warehouse.
Yeah, enterprise data. Okay. Nothing stops. NSPB does not connect only to NetSuite. What we do is, it's got an application called data management, and in data management is where the mapping takes place, where you actually map any external codes to your NSPB dimensionality. And what's quite standard is you'd actually have flat files or CSV files, or you can connect to other applications like an HR application like Liberate IT, Infinite Cloud, sorry.
Yes.
Like Infinite Cloud as an example, or any other application. Now, that is definitely not out of the box. That integration you've got to build, but the capability to build it is 100% there.
Is there? I mean, I think you mentioned it earlier in the presentation, but you mentioned Hyperion. This is essentially Oracle's Hyperion product, isn't it?
This is essentially the same. At the moment, if you go to the Oracle world and you basically get your in Oracle world, it's called EPM, and you basically get your EPM Enterprise, which is a whole stack of EPM tools. And this is essentially just the planning side of it. Now, what I mean with a whole stack of tools is, in the Oracle world, you get financial consolidation and close and account reconciliation and narrative reporting, and there's a whole host, because you buy like a whole package.
Yeah. Gotcha. Okay, great. Last question, unless more sneak in. Are we able to forecast based off a calculation or a function? So, for example, can we calculate commissions, in your example, as a percentage of sales, and 100%. Sales as a percent of staff costs?
Yes, 100%, because what we actually do is, I'm just thinking of where's a good place to show this.
Yeah, and apologies for that. I said to Berndt, don't go into too much detail around forecasting and how you can do it and all the flexibility that's available, right?
What you can see as a standard, what we've got here are things like 3-month rolling. You got the different rolling. You can actually forecast the prior year. You can say, I want to actually enter a manual. And what happens is, as soon as I go and change this, what you will see is it just changed the underlying forecast, because it calculates it in a different way based on that formula. So we can easily set up additional ones, percentage of sales. Or as an example, you can even drive it off things like if it's facility expenses, and you drive it off the number of FTEs or the number of headcount or something like that. That is the beauty of this application, is that you build those formulas once, and once they're okay, then it becomes so flexible to everybody to use.
That's great, mate. Thank you. And I guess there's no more questions that have come through, so I'll wrap up more of a comment, which I warned you, rather than a question. That is, I guess when we look at planning and budgeting, both the web view and the Excel add-in, very different navigation to what people are used to in NetSuite. And that's one of the reasons why we partner with RCI is your focus around training and making sure that your customers are self-sufficient after you're said and done and you've wrapped up the project, that they're not just beholden, relying on some super smart programmer that can go and do things. Like, you want your customers, or our shared customers, to be self-sufficient with the use of the product. So that's great, man. We really appreciate that. All right, no further questions have come through, Berndt. So thank you very much for sharing that with us today. I really appreciate it. I think I learned a lot about the planning and budgeting tool. As you can imagine, we only really just scratched the surface, right? We just went very high level. Here's some business scenarios as an example that we'd like to cover through. If there's something that you go, hey, I just want to learn a little bit more detail around how we'll actually use that, reach out to me. Love to talk to you about that, and can take you through that.
We hope this video gave you the information you were after. If you have any further questions, get in touch with us using the links in the description.